Hello, everyone. As noted on the board and on this post in your Google Classroom, I'm out getting ready for Outdoor Lab, which is in February 7th, I believe. So I wanted to kind of make sure that you understood what you were supposed to do today. Number one, make sure you have finished and turned in yesterday's paper from the videos we watched on decomposers. If you don't remember that part 5, if that video is not loading for you, go ahead and just turn it in. If you do want to do part 5 or the video did not give you any trouble, then you can receive extra credit for that. Number 2, there is a document linked here below and a paper copy in class called Decomposers and Scavengers. This will be our last day with it. And then number 3, a vocabulary assignment, pretty straightforward. I want to look here at number 2, this Decomposers and Scavengers document below. So when you click on this, you're going to see this document open up. And I made a typo. This should obviously say go to Google Classroom classwork for today, Tuesday. So I'm going to read this article to you. You are welcome to turn this off and read it on your own here on the computer by clicking on this link, or you can get a paper copy there are a couple paper copies in class. And then it is kind of a long article. So I wanted to skip through a couple parts and highlight a couple important things for you. So if you would like to listen to it, here we go. This is called Recycling the Dead. The decay of dead things is simply nature's way of mining old materials for new uses. Here in our picture, we have moss covering a dead tree in Pennsylvania Weiser State Forest. The decomposition that follows the death of every organism sets the stage for new life. It's nature's way of recycling. All right, so I'm going to start here at our beginning part in these paragraphs. Eventually, all living things die, and except in very rare cases, all of those dead things will rot. But that's not the end of it. What rots will wind up becoming part of something else. This is how nature recycles. Just as death marks the end of an old life, the decay and decomposition that soon follow provide material for new life. Decomposition breaks apart dead bodies, explains Anne Pringle. She's a biologist at Harvard University in Cambridge, Massachusetts. Okay, now we're down here above this picture. When any organism dies, fungi and bacteria get to work breaking it down. Put another way, they decompose things. It's the mirror image of composing where something is created. Some decomposers live in leaves or hang out in the guts of dead animals. These fungi and bacteria act like built-in destructors. Next paragraphs. Soon, more decomposers will join them. Soil contains thousands of single-celled fungi and bacteria that take things apart. Mushrooms and other multi-celled fungi also can get into the act. So can insects, worms, and other invertebrates. Yes, rotting can be yucky and disgusting. Still, it is vitally important. Decomposition aids farmers, preserves forest health, and even helps make biofuels. That is why so many scientists are interested in decay, including how climate change and pollution may affect it. So that was the introduction. So now we see our first title here called Why We Need Rot. So if you look at your paper that you're working on with this, with the questions, you can see that this is one of the headings where you might find an answer as well as what is above. So let's do our first two paragraphs here. Decomposition isn't just the end of everything, it's also the start. Without decay, none of us would exist. Life would end without rot, observes Newt Nadelhofer. He's an ecologist at the University of Michigan in Ann Arbor. Decomposition releases the chemicals that are critical for life. Decomposers mine them from the dead so that these recycled materials can feed the living. The most important thing recycled by rot is the element carbon. This chemical element is the physical basis of all life on Earth. After death, decomposition releases carbon into the air, soil, and water. Living things capture this liberated carbon to build a new life. It's all part of what scientists call the carbon cycle. The carbon cycle really is about life and death, observes Melanie Mays. She's a geologist and soil scientist at Oak Ridge National Laboratory in Tennessee. The carbon cycle starts with plants. In the presence of sunlight, green plants combine carbon dioxide from the air with water. This process, called photosynthesis, creates the simple sugar glucose. It's made of nothing more than carbon, oxygen, and hydrogen in those starting materials. Plants use glucose and other sugars to grow and fuel all of their activities, from breathing and growth to reproduction. When plants die, carbon and other nutrients stay in their fibers. Stems, roots, wood, bark, and leaves all contain these fibers. So let's look real quick here at this picture. Whenever you have pictures in something, you should always kind of check them out, see what they can help you understand about what you're reading. This one says, in the carbon cycle, decomposers break down dead material from plants and other organisms and release carbon dioxide into the atmosphere where it is available to plants. So, kind of a picture there of what's going on, maybe below the surface, so that you can see as these decomposers take things apart, they're providing them for the roots of the plants. We don't see any of that since it's underground. All right, next heading is called the fabric of plants. Think of a leaf like a piece of cloth, says Jeff Blanchard. This biologist works at the University of Massachusetts, or UMass, in Amherst. Cloth is woven with different threads, and each thread is made of fibers spun together. So think of that like whatever you're wearing. Most of your clothes are fibers sewn together. Cotton and even synthetic materials like polyester are made to do that. So let me get you the paragraph here. So likewise, the walls of each plant cell contain fibers made of differing amounts of carbon, hydrogen, and oxygen. Skip down here. When a plant dies, microbes and even larger fungi break down these fibers. Remember, the fibers made of carbon, the hydrogens, and oxygens. They do so by releasing enzymes. Enzymes are molecules made by living things that speed up chemical reactions. Here, different enzymes help snip apart the chemical bonds that hold together the fiber's molecules, and snipping those bonds releases nutrients, including glucose. So I'm going to skip down here a little bit. So our end of this paragraph is, but carbon is far from the only thing that gets recycled this way. Rot, or things that are rotting or decomposing, also releases nitrogen, phosphorus, and about 24 other nutrients or elements. Living things need these to grow and prosper. So this is the same thing we talked about yesterday on Monday in the little bit of text that's in your notebook. Now we've got the dirt on decay. So you see it's a different color. This is a new heading. Okay, so about dirt. The world would be very different if the rates at which things decay were to change. To find out how different, Nadelhofer and other scientists are probing rot in forests around the world. Study sites, including the Michigan Biological Station in Ann Arbor and the Harvard Forest near Petersham, Massachusetts. They call one series of these experiments DIRT. It stands for Detritus Input Removal Treatments. Detritus is debris. In a forest, it includes the leaves that fall and litter the ground. You learned this yesterday on Monday when you listened to the TED Talk Part 4 about what detritus is. So it's just a fancy word for all the leaves that fall off the trees, maybe stems, old parts of trees and plants. So what he's saying here is that every year they measure the soil as part of this project to see what kind of changes it's undergoing, to see if these leaves that often humans want to rake up and put in nice piles and in plastic bags, to see, what their purpose is in nature. So every year in the fall, they take all the leaf litter or old leaves off an experimental plot and put it on another plot. And then they measure what happens to each plot. So here's a little bit about what they find out. Over time, leaf starved forest soils undergo a range of changes. Scientists refer to the carbon rich materials released from once living organisms as organic matter. So, organic matter is just stuff that was once alive that now has died, like a leaf or a stem that has fallen off a tree. And what we have found out from these scientist studies is that soils deprived of leaf litter, or soils that don't have the leaves, like somebody came and raked them up, do a poor job of releasing nutrients back to plants. The types of microbes that are present, so microbes are bacteria, like things that are microscopic, they also change. So the forest soils that get the extra leaf litter and have the old leaves on them become more fertile. And some farmers have picked up on this. So tilling, if you're a farmer, you till the ground, means plowing. And in no-till farming, growers just leave plant stalks and other debris on their fields instead of plowing them after a crop's harvest. Since plowing can release some of the soil's carbon into the air, the no-till can keep the soil more fertile. So what they're saying is that farmers have learned from the scientists that if they just leave the old detritus or old leaf parts, picture a corn plant. Once that corn comes off the plant, you have a lot of green stem and leaves that fall on the ground. If the farmers let it lay there and just decompose into the soil, it adds good things, nutrients to the soil for next year's crops. So let's go down to the next paragraph called heating up. A much larger experiment is going on worldwide. Scientists refer to it as climate change. By 2100, average global temperatures likely will rise between 2 and 5 degrees Celsius or 4 and 9 degrees Fahrenheit. Much of that increase comes from people burning oil, coal, and other fossil fuels. That burning adds carbon dioxide and other gases to the air. Like a greenhouse window, these gases trap heat near Earth's surface so that it doesn't escape into space. We will be talking a lot about this as we move forward. We will be talking about the carbon cycle in depth after the holiday break, and we'll be talking about what this means, this greenhouse that is caused by all this extra carbon. So scientists wanted to see how this rise in temperature would affect the speed at which things rot. And they're really just not sure. Right now, there's a lot of research going on. So what they do know is that higher temperatures, so when it's hotter, things decompose more and a little bit faster, and that puts more energy into this circle of life that's happening in the ecosystems. So if climate change makes things happen faster, it will also speed how quickly more carbon enters the atmosphere. And so more carbon dioxide means more warming. So that's one hypothesis that scientists are looking at, are testing right now. And you can see some of the scientists here and in some of these pictures. But the situation's more complicated than that, is basically what the rest of this says. And they can't for sure be exact about what's going to happen. So they're continuing to study it. Science is an ongoing field of study in which we don't know all the answers. And so a lot of people's livelihood, like their job, depends on this research that they're doing. So this next section here, the or the heading is exaggerating climate effects in the field, just goes on to tell you a little bit more about the study of how climate is affecting the way that decomposers work. One of the things that is really interesting is that burning fossil fuels, the things we burn for energy, is not just about carbon dioxide and warming. It also adds nitrogen to the air. And nitrogen eventually comes back down to the earth as the precipitation comes down, as there's rain, snow, or dust. Nitrogen is also part of many fertilizers. Um, But just like too much ice cream can make you sick, too much fertilizer isn't good. And this is very true. So when you think about the way that our communities are, we strip all the soil, the good, healthy, nourished soil, we clear all that out with big machines, and then we put concrete down and houses down or buildings down. And then we wonder why the grass doesn't grow or why we need to bring in so much fertilizer. So fertilizer is only really there because we have already taken the nutrients out. So if we could find better ways to build our communities, we might not need so much of that fertilizer. So we're going to scroll down a little bit. We're going to go to fuel for thought. Okay, so fuel for thought is our heading. So our first paragraph here. The science of rot matters as much for transportation as it does for trees. In fact, rot is the key to better biofuels. Today, the big biofuel is ethanol, also known as grain alcohol. Not sure if you guys have heard of that before, but it is something that we possibly can use as an alternative fuel instead of the gasoline and the things that we are doing for energy. So, things that like farm crop wastes, including corn stalks and other once living things that have died, if we could break down those fibers and release that energy that's in there, we would hope we could use that as a fuel. And that is working. There are even some cars that run on ethanol nowadays. So that is another example of what scientists are studying. You can see here there's a picture of a scientist, Mary Hagan. She's holding up two microcosms, is what they're called. They're miniature ecosystems, and they're growing soil and microbes and trying to see the best way that the ground up plant material is being decomposed the fastest and becoming a biofuel. So, things we can use for energy. So if you wonder what one of the things you could do when you grow up is research how we could use some of these things from the natural world for our energy. Because we don't want to use those non-renewable resources that release that carbon dioxide, like our natural gas and our coal and oil and such. So if we scroll on down a little bit, skip some of this, we're going to get to rot and you, and this will be the end here, okay? So you can see here it says rot and you. So rotting is just, an adjective, a descriptive word for decomposing. So let's go ahead and finish this up. Decomposition doesn't happen only in forests, farms, and factories. Decomposition happens all around us and inside of us. For example, scientists are continuing to learn more about the crucial role played by gut microbes in digesting the food we eat. So, gut microbes, your gut is like your stomach. And so they're looking at how the microbes or bacteria in our stomachs, how they decompose the food that we eat. There's still a lot of discovery that needs to be done, says DeAngelis. There are so many microbes that do all kinds of crazy things. And you know this if you've ever had an upset stomach or you have health trouble with your stomach and digestion, or you've heard of probiotics and things like that. There's a lot going on in our stomachs with the decomposition of the food because it's being broken down to release the energy for us to be able to function all day long. Last paragraph. You can experiment with rotten science too. Start by adding kitchen and yard waste to a backyard compost pile, suggests Nadelhofer. In just a few months, decomposition will change that dead plant material to fertile humus or humus. You can then spread it on your lawn or garden. So it's not always that easy, but I don't know if you personally or maybe someone you know has a compost pile, and sometimes they're outside, sometimes they're inside. You do have to work hard at them, but it does help us decompose things and use them for fertilizer. For example, if you eat an apple or a banana, and you take the apple core after you're done eating it and the banana peel, or maybe you have some eggs and you have the egg shell. Those are things that you can use for fertilizer. So we don't really need these chemical fertilizers that are marketed to us at every Home Depot and Lowe's and Walmart. We just need to learn how to use the living things that we are eating for energy, and then the leftovers, we can get the nitrogen and the phosphorus and the carbons back out of them and put them on our plants with things like compost piles. So it's just another way you can kind of contribute to making the world a better place is a little research on that if you're interested. If not, no worries. So once again, this article also shows you some of the bigger words that we had used throughout here. So if you need to reference any of those definitions to help you, go right ahead. Otherwise, what you will do now is you will go back here to your article, and in order of the sections of the article, you will see the section is labeled. So like this introduction part before there's a heading, and then the heading why we need rot, and then the heading dirt on decay, heating up, rot and you. So there's only 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, about 8 questions on this article. So I know it's going to take you a minute to kind of, maybe you want to get the paper copy from class, or you want to just open this one back up. But if you want to read back through it and see if you can find these answers, you can type them in here if you make your own copy and share it with me, or you can do it on the paper in class. When you are finished with this, you will turn it in. And then lastly, this is tells you what to do next, which is also the same thing that is if you look in the vocabulary, it will tell you what to do. So if you're finished with Monday's decomposer video questions and you're finished with the article questions on the chart, you may now get your notebook and the Science Source Green Book, and you will write 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 vocabulary words, and then the definitions. You can get them from the Green Book. I have put one definition here for you, and then you'll also have to put some kind of picture with them as normal. If you have any questions, send me an email and I will answer it as the best I can throughout my meetings. Otherwise, I hope you guys are having a great day. Be good for the sub. I'll be back tomorrow, Wednesday, if I am missing your class. And we will do a game on predator prey. So today's our last day on decomposers. Please do the best that you can on your assignments and have a good rest of your day.